Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes. Yay, all right. Okay, are we in the right room? Do we want to learn about sleep and how to optimize it? Yay! Okay, fantastic. First, a couple quick questions about the room. How are you guys sleeping? So I want to know a few things. This is a particularly interesting group, I'd imagine. So how many, meaning like well-versed, I'd imagine, in a lot of these topics. So how many of you are tracking your sleep right now? Oh my God, I've never seen this, like ever. I don't even know how to proceed. That's like amazing. Okay, fantastic, thank you. How many of you have had a sleep test of some type? Oh, I like this one. Yes, Danny Hamilton, fantastic, love it. Okay, great, yes, of course, the biohacker OG. And sleep tests, I also mean at home too. Did I give everyone's, okay, perfect. And then also, how many of you would like to spend the next hour or so learning how to up-level your results with your sleep? Ah, this is so my room. Okay, amazing. Okay, fantastic. Well, how are we going to do that, and what are our intentions with this talk? My intention is to have you leaving understanding how you can use circadian biology to really transform your sleep results. And I promise I'll explain what that all means. But first, it probably would help to understand a little bit about who is in the front of the room. Why am I giving my life to sleep? And, you know, I'm just as surprised as anyone else because I did not intend for this to be my life path. And what my life really looked like is now I think of it in a 3-part series. I think of it as before I went through the sleep breakdown, during and after. And what I mean by that is before I went through this period of just a real rock bottom in my own life with my sleep, I really didn't think about my sleep that much. And I'm sharing this because in case you find yourself in what I'm saying, I'm hoping that this can help elevate your results with your own sleep and find yourself in what I'm sharing. But the labels and narratives that I had with my sleep were things like, I'm a night owl, I'm a short sleeper, I'm a bad sleeper, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Does anyone say anything like this? Okay, great, fantastic. And I also understand that some of you identify as great sleepers. We'll get to you, don't worry. But if you're in the group that I was in, I really didn't think that there was much to do because I thought that this was just how it was for me, the cards that I was dealt, really. And so life went on that way, managing my sleep in this way of looking at it. And what ended up happening was I didn't notice some of the deleterious effects with my own health. So I didn't notice that I was getting the beginnings, well, I noticed that I was getting an ulcer, certainly, but I didn't notice that it could be connected with sleep. I didn't notice that my kind of poor results or symptoms with my period what could be connected to this. I didn't understand that my mounting anxiety could be playing a role. Just a number of things that weren't working in my life. I didn't look at sleep, and that's just how it was. And as a serial entrepreneur in Manhattan, burning the candle at both ends, it wasn't until I went through one of my lowest points in my life, this rock bottom period in my life when I couldn't sleep. I went through this time of insomnia. And it totally shook me to my core. And at my lowest point, I went to the doctors, and I was traveling at the time. So I went to this little clinic in Croatia, of all things. And I leave with sleeping pills. And in that moment, really, what I got in that moment was, it looks like if I'm going to transform this problem, it feels like I'm going to just have to figure this out, because it didn't feel like there was a clear route or path that didn't involve taking something or just settling. And so what that actually did was ended up being one of the best things that could have happened in my life because it actually opened up the doors to going down the rabbit hole to understand what in the world does it even take to get great sleep. And not just for philosophical musings, but because I was desperate. And honestly, I can be light about it now, but during that point, it was scary and a rock bottom period. It was, am I stuck like this? Am I gonna have to take pills for the rest of my life to change this? And so on the bright side of this, going through and down that rabbit hole totally changed everything for me. And to spoiler alert, I tried a lot of things that worked, a lot of things that didn't work, and I will highlight some of the things that worked. But on the other side of that, my life looks totally different, and I really credit it to this turning point in my life of managing my sleep. And so today, sleeping great quantifiably. Now, quick call out, I was sharing with some of my friends, our AC went out last night, so it just so happened I had a really crappy night of sleep last night, but usually, quantifiably, on just about every wearable, I'm a wearable fiend, sleeping on the right side of the bell curve, which, as I shared, I didn't even think this was in the domain of possibility for me. And on a regular basis, interacting with thousands of people routinely to improve their sleep. I host the #2 Sleep podcast, run a Sleep Obsessions newsletter, we call it, that's been going out every Monday for nearly 6 years at this point. Also run a large-scale Oura Ring database for sleep optimization. Of all of you that raise your hand, there's so many people tracking their sleep. How many are using the Oura? Okay, quite a decent number. How about Whoop? Okay, Apple, Fitbit. This is my own personal interest. Sorry, this doesn't quite feed into the presentation, but amazing. So I will say I'm very Oura-centric, and so we have what's been fascinating is because of this large database, we get to understand really granularly what does move the needle to change our, is it a supplement, is it a behavior, is it a gadget? I will share. And I actually have created, in particular, a niche in high-stakes poker. So I work with a lot of high-stakes poker players, and I share that because, surprisingly, they are living lifestyles in a casino designed on purpose to confuse the circadian rhythm. That's actually a lot closer to how a lot of us are living, and I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. As well as entrepreneurs, I work with tons of sponsors, hotels, corporations, run courses and programs. Now, I don't just say that to say that. I say that because, as I shared, I was someone that was convinced it was just in my genes. I'm a bad sleeper, that's how it is. And I'm here to say that if I can transform this area, anyone can certainly do this. And even if you're sitting in your seat and being like, well, my sleep's not that bad, I just want to up level, promise I have content for you as well. And my whole mission on this planet today is to give people agency with their sleep through circadian biology. I know I've said this term, and I promise to explain it. But first, in case you're like, is this even really that much of a problem? Now, I know this room is a little different in that you actually seem to be prioritizing this area, which is fantastic. Not every room I'm talking to does that. But in case we're just, want to get a sense of the scope of things, well, just last year, the Google searches for sleep actually reached all-time highs. So even if you're someone that's, slipped in the room and you're like, oh, shoot, how do I get out of this room? This is not even for me. Just also please know that your spouse, your kids, your loved ones, someone in your life is really struggling with this area. So I would love for you to take some of the things that you learn, even if it's not directly applicable to you, but hopefully it is. I mean, everyone sleeps. And so knowing that people are struggling and why are they struggling, and we'll get into that in just a moment, but to underscore, there's a lot of biohacks and things that we can be doing certainly at this conference, and it can maybe be overwhelming. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm like, well, I got to buy this, and I got to do this thing, and but now, of course, I'm biased, but I do believe that sleep is the area to begin your foundation of wellness, specifically through circadian entrainment and how we can manage our light-dark cycles and some of our behaviors. But also, why? So I can imagine, can everyone find themselves somewhere on here? Would they like to improve one of these things, right? Maybe? Not really. Oh, geez. Okay. Okay. Could everyone understand, or could anyone give me an area of life that's not impacted by your sleep? Maybe we can start there, because I haven't found in a single room that could. Okay, it's good. All right. So I hope that makes my point that sleep impacts everything. And so just about everything that you've been likely learning about throughout this entire conference is going to be aided by beginning here. Now, I know this room already wants to know about this area, so And it sounds as if you're already bought into the idea that we want to start with sleep, so we'll scoot right along. But in case you're someone in one of these red flag areas, I'd like you to hopefully find yourself in here. This is a common spectrum that I sort of see, and these are some common red flags. Does everyone see themselves or know someone who says things like this? Yeah, okay, some head nods. All right, great. This one, super interesting. I hear this one all the time when people are like, oh, you do sleep? Okay, well, I'm fine. And so they say, I fall asleep the minute my head hits the pillow, I'm good. That's actually a major red flag for us, that there could be sleep disorders present, sleep deprivation, other things. I'm illustrating this because I am clear that I haven't found a single person yet that we couldn't have particular things that we could bring in to up-level their sleep results. So hopefully somewhere in here you see yourself. This one I see a ton with high performers, right? Just kind of lower the limit of what's you're used to, and then this becomes your new norm. And then lastly, this one was the me example. If you're similar to this, so that you kind of just maybe potentially resign to that's how it is. And it doesn't have to be like that, yay. Okay, so, but before I get into part of my real commitment here, I actually should have shared that in the beginning, but one of the main things I wanted to tell you was that I am really clear that I want you leaving today with at least one behavioral change that you're going to bring in within ideally about the next week or so, and tons of tools. So we're gonna get into all of that, but before we do, I would be remiss if I don't hit on the fact that there's over 100 sleep-wake disorders. Did everyone know that? I mean, it's just, right? Thank you, very animated, I appreciate that. Yeah, really, like how has this gone unchecked? How is this not something that we're all aware of? And so if you have any of these things, I would implore you to consider getting tested. Now, I am, again, biased. I would like to see a future where everyone is tested, not just once, but multiple times throughout their lives, either in lab or at home. And at home has become much easier nowadays. And now, warning for this next slide, a little graphic, but I share this just to share the fact that there are so many surprising correlations between certain things that you might not expect could be impacting your sleep results, but particularly since many of you are tracking in this room, you might be seeing certain things on your trackers, and you want to make a difference with it, but it's like, well, what else I do? I'm getting all the supplements, I'm doing some of the clear behaviors. This is an example of some of the surprising things that might be present. So this is a example of a tongue tie, different grades of tongue tie. Right off the bat, does anyone see themselves in any of these? Oh, Danny Hamilton is well-versed on this, yes, exactly. See, fantastic. So we want to get well-versed in this. Does anyone recognize their own tongue as potentially looking like this? Maybe, possibly, no, a hard no. Okay, well, fun fact, I actually look like this one. So if you want to follow me on Instagram over the summer, I'm going to be sharing content around how I'm going to be removing that tongue tie. And seeing the difference for sleep as a result of the many things. Danny is very triggered by that. My good friend Danny Hamilton. Okay, so I will stop scaring you with graphics. I promise that's the only one like that. I need like a warning for that one. Okay, I do have this new fun system. I hope it's fun. You can, let me know if you like it. I have 3 fancy gold stars throughout this presentation. And the gold stars because I want you to pay attention to these slides. And this is the first one. So I already mentioned testing for sleep disorders at home. Do you or someone you know have one or more of these things present, right? Okay, I like that emphatic wave, yes. That was great. Okay, so exactly, and if we would have thought that our, say, primary care, or even very knowledgeable functional medicine doctor or what have you would have spotted some of the red flags and gotten you tested. Unfortunately, systemically, we're just dealing with a problem where the average doctor, even at a Harvard Med, is getting around 2 hours of training in sleep, right? So unfortunately, they just might not be able to spot some of those signs that it's important for you to get tested. So we do have to advocate for ourselves right now. Any questions? Well, I'm throwing out graphic slides and all these things before I get into, into the tools. We're good? Oh, yes. Yes, yes. To translate what she was just saying, if anyone's like, what are these words? To get a tongue tie removal, there are great, fantastic experts, and Dr. Zaghi is one. I'm about to be airing a podcast episode with him. So if you're silently thinking, oh, maybe I do have a tongue tie, or my kid, or what have you, check that episode out and be aware of Dr. Zaghi's really forward thinking. So thank you for that. Any other questions before I jump in? I'm so glad you said that. Yes, thank you. Because I happen to just be showing this picture. This happens to be one of the partners that we work with, Lofton. I only share that because I grew up with no money, and the barrier to entry with some of these sleep interventions sometimes I've found, or just the trouble that sometimes people can imagine, sometimes can be this hindrance. So I do like that this is a company among many that are now allowing you to get this at home for under $200 and quickly and fast. However, there are cases where certainly we might want to always, an in-lab is going to be superior as far as the information that we get back in a particular way, meaning we're just gonna have more eyeballs on it, we're gonna get more information, more data points. However, there's the argument that that might not be as indicative of your actual sleep, right? When you're in this weird thing with all the stickers and whatever. So I think what's exciting about these at-home tests is that they allow the possibility to test at home easily with just this watch or ring, but they tend to be they're helpful for respiratory-based sleep disorders. Now, there are tons of other sleep disorders. People are dealing with things like restless leg, periodic limb movement disorder, other things. Then we might want some of the at-home, and there are some newer ones on the market coming out that are trying to bridge that gap. They're just a little harder to get. Great question. Anyone else before oh yeah, go ahead. Oh, I should say that before I'm just go listen to the episode. The Sleep is a Skill podcast. If I didn't properly say that and properly introduce myself, I am Mollie Eastman, and I do run Sleep is a Skill, and I have the Sleep is a Skill podcast. And I say that name emphatically because I hope you're getting the message that I truly believe, and I hope everyone can just try this on with me, that sleep is a crucial skill set for us to all gain, right? Okay, all right, so then now that we got some of those questions out of the way, and if you have any more, I'll check back in a moment, but now we can kind of shift to some of the core pieces that I want to get to of how to think maybe differently, maybe not with this room. I feel like you're quite an advanced room, but even if you're in this conversation, all of us can use support on how to practically bring these things into our life and understand them a bit more. So no matter where you're sitting, we're going to dive into what is the real solution to transforming this massive problem with our sleep. We saw that Google Trends, so many people searching to understand how to improve sleep. What's the solution? Well, I am here saying that circadian rhythm entrainment is the solution. So let me explain. I've mentioned this term, and it could help to define it. So it is really, in essence, our 24-hour body clock, and of course, it controls our sleep. We all kind of likely are aware of that. But it turns out that it's really impacting and influencing so much more than just that. And it's guided by a number of time givers, fancy term Zeitgeibers, and I'm going to get into just 2 of them today based on time and what have you, but there's a lot more. And so what else is there? Well, our body clock impacts, of course, sleep. You all know this. And I want to underscore that it also impacts all of these other areas as well, right? So meaning that I would reckon that just about every area of health that you might be looking to impact while you're here at this conference is going to be on the foundation, whether we realize it or not, whether it's a blind spot or not, on the basis and blueprint of our circadian health. So is everyone clear on that? I'm kind of like speeding through to get to the tools, but does that make sense? Okay, great, amazing. So then here's the actual issue as to why this has become such a problem, a dysregulated circadian rhythm. And just to be clear, if you are living indoors under electric lights, you really by definition are dealing with some form of circadian dysregulation. So that means, does anyone not live indoors and under electric lights? I mean, right? Okay. So then that means everyone is very much in this conversation, and some of us may be more extreme than others. I mentioned the poker players that I work with. They tend to be a bit of an extreme example of this, but more of us are getting closer and closer with our own like phone slot machines and our indoor lifestyles, maybe not getting outside, not a lot of windows, lots of faux lights, lots of stimuli. And so to underscore this, I mentioned this stat a lot because I think it really tells the whole story. As of 2001, the EPA found that the average person in the United States is spending about 93% of their time indoors. Why is that a problem? Well, if I just shared that by definition of being indoors under electric light at night, this is confusing that body clock, then this means that over the years, we've gotten worse and worse as far as our disruption. And this was in 2001, before a pandemic, before Netflix, repeat, just play the next episode, features and all those fun things, work from home, revolution. So it's likely probably even higher, we would imagine, right? So this is a big deal. So what's the solution? Well, I used to go in on my presentations. We don't have a lot of time for this, but I used to mention a study, but I'll just give you the cliff notes out of the University of Colorado that found, they did it twice, and it's got a lot of press, where they took night owls camping. And they took them camping for a long week and a long weekend. And in both cases, what they found is that they measured melatonin production, and simply by getting them out of that indoor environment under electric lights at night, then simply by doing that, they were able to phase advance. Have you heard of this study before? Okay, yes, exactly. I love that nod. Yes, so they were able to phase advance and actually shift this whole labeling system. I used to say this too. I'm a night owl. It's just how it is. I get all my great ideas, at 3 a.m, like just ridiculous conversations. And it turns out that by shifting the environment, they had totally different results for people like the flawed logic I had. So that's simply by changing the environment, changing light. Now, I imagine all of us are not gonna move outside, right? So probably not. Okay, so then what can we do? Well, at its core, circadian rhythm entrainment is truly about a couple things. It's about getting outside as much as we possibly can, and especially to counteract some of the times when we're indoors like this for an extended period of time with all this business. How can we get ourselves out so that that ratio is not tipping so frequently? So we want to get outside as often as we can, demand brighter days and darker nights. And by virtue of that, that means that a lot of us are going to have to shift a lot of our environment. And hopefully, that goes into like legislation changes, but that's a whole other topic. And I'll get into more to demonstrate of how we can do this. And when we're indoors, how can we mimic what is happening outside? So I like to call this rewilding. Okay, so that's kind of like a little bit of the context, and I want to shift over to the tools and those kind of behavioral change elements. But before I do that, I want to check in with all of you. How are you, is this landing for you? Does this make sense? Okay, before we get into like rapid fire of a lot of slides. Okay, so then I mentioned that there are two time givers that can really transform your, the workability of that body clock I mentioned. And the most important one, if you get nothing else out of what I'm saying, I know I'm throwing a lot of things at you, but if you get nothing else, we want to understand that our circadian light dark timing is the top, the tippity top of what is the most impactful of helping to get that body clock aligned. And so just a little bit about why that is, and I will try to rapid fire this. Okay, so essentially our environment, the environment that we had evolved from for millions of years, really just looked like this, pretty simple. And then when the sun would set, total darkness, and we'd redo it again. What were the wavelengths of light that we were under? Well, they look like this, beautiful, rainbow-esque, different kind of ratios of this at different points in the day, but always balanced, right? So what happened? Well, about 145 years ago, Edison created the incandescent light bulb. And in case you're like, wait, where is she going with this? I promise I'll bring it back. Not just a history lesson for fun, but 145 years ago, which is a blip of time in human history, right? Edison created this incandescent light bulb. This was a big deal because suddenly we could go from really being tethered to those rhythms of nature. You had to have some money, honestly. There's the big barriers to be able to have candles going all night long, lanterns, fire, effort. You know, there's resources that had to be had. Now we could just flip on a light and just about anyone could, you know, have 24-hour lifestyles. Well, just last year, the incandescent light bulb became illegal to purchase in the United States. So most of us are under this sort of environment, right? And I would reckon that this is kind of what we're under. No offense about Palmer. Every place I'm in, I'm always kind of, you know, insinuating things about the environment. But, you know, this is just every place that we find ourselves, and it's just kind of how it's been designed. But we want to be informed. And so it turns out that this looks pretty different, right, than those other slides I was sharing with you. And probably you've all heard about the blue band, right? That, well, not the band, but the blue light, how blue light can impact your melatonin production, right? We've heard this. And so we can see how this is pretty foreign for our biology to have our lights like this, right? Well, it's such a problem that actually a scientific consensus came out last year, and it was calling for warning labels on light bulbs when used at night. Has everyone heard about this? Probably not. It hasn't gotten good press. Okay, so why would they do this? This is, you know, almost 250 circadian scientists referencing almost 2,700 peer-reviewed publications, and they're calling for these warning labels on light bulbs when used at night, citing obesity, diabetes, heart disease, reproductive disorders, psychiatric disorders, cancers, and of course, poor sleep, given our conversation. Oh, thank you for the time check. So that's kind of a big deal, and they're risking their entire reputations for this. So clearly, this matters. So what do we do about it? Now, I promised you tools and things and behavioral changes, so now we're going to get into that. I also mentioned that fun and friendly star system. Hopefully you love this. This is new for me, so let me know. But sunlight viewing is one of the things that I'm sure just about everyone in this room knows about, right? We do. Probably. No, maybe no. I don't know. Okay, we got a slow wave nod. Okay, so I think we might know about this, but I think it could become more gamified for most of us of how to bring this into our lifestyles for the average person, right? We're busy, we've got whatever, Zoom calls, things to do. How do we get ourselves outside? So I would like to implore you, even if you've already heard of this, even if you're doing some of these things, how can you up-level this a bit, and how can you front-load your light exposure a bit more during the day? How many people are prioritizing outdoor sunlight exposure right now? Of course, yes. Okay, oh, God, I love this room. Amazing. Okay, fantastic. Are some of you struggling to fit this in or to know exactly where to put it? Yes. Exactly. Okay, so right, yeah. So good. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know. So the reason you've heard different answers is because it is very nuanced. And so, but I can give you some ways to think about this. So one of the reasons it's nuanced is because, and this is where it becomes so fascinating, you could have multiple presentations just on light and understanding the physics of light, why it impacts our health. But a couple of reasons. One, where you fall on the globe, what season it is, cloud coverage, your Fitzpatrick scale as far as your skin tone, if we're talking about vitamin D. So there's multiple reasons and elements that I don't quite have the time to get into as far as the breakdown, but what I can say is a general rule of thumb. How we start with our clients is that we have them begin with at least getting around 10 minutes to start, just to win this kind of behavioral component. And then starting to, as we get the muscle built of this behavior, then how can we start to notice, oh, it's a cloudy day. I live here in Austin, it's been cloudy like every day. And so when that's the case, then we want to actually augment our amount of time. That's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people might intuitively think. They're like, oh, it's too cloudy, why bother? But instead, we want to actually prioritize it and be out there longer. So a few apps that can help, and I'll get into those in a second, but I'll share as well. So D-Minder, when we're talking about vitamin D production, so it's one aspect of what really makes a difference with our sleep. Vitamin D is crucial for sleep. So D-Minder is an app that you can get more specifics, as well as Circadian Life app that's going to help you actually kind of plan out your day, be aware of the different elements, the UVA, the UVB, different times when you can get outside and why it matters. So it will have some education piece in there. But the other thing I want to say, so if we're starting with just that general, this is a very blanket statement, but around 10 minutes from a behavioral aspect, then the other piece of this, we did have Dr. Sachin Panda on the podcast, the Sleep is a Skill podcast, to say the name. And so one of the reasons I mentioned him is that he's been getting a ton of press around some of his research finding that requiring at least 30 minutes to an hour outside as a kind of rule of thumb to be able to create sufficient melatonin at night. Now, I would say that's a conservative estimate, but that's lots of research to point to if we have a place to begin. And then as you're dosing, because people are like, I'm busy, I've got stuff to do, like, where am I putting this? Would love to prioritize front loading a bit of your day where you can and slice up that sunlight exposure, but then aiming for around that hour ideally, and then you can then graduate from there. Does that make sense? Is that in alignment with what you're doing? Okay, perfect. Amazing, great question. Okay, any other, oh, yes.
What happens when you get out before the sun is up?
Yeah, that's like always $1 million question. Okay, so one, I know I already mentioned Circadian Life. I'll mention it again. We're actually going to have them on the podcast as well to go in more deeply on this, but it can help kind of guide you. But before the sun is up, there is periods of time from kind of that daylight aspect before many of us might think of when the sun is actually rising. So there can be a little bit of time, a little bit of wiggle room. But for most, in all intents and purposes, it's like, okay, I get up way before the sun. What do I do? So there are different schools of thought on this. The more the mainstream approach, you might hear like an Andrew Huberman, I'm sure this crowd knows about him, might then point to some of this more circadian aligned research of bright light exposure. There is research around that. I would caution people from doing that, and I take more of an approach around red light before sunrise, and that kind of aligns with some of that arc that we saw with sunset and sunrise, have a lot of that infrared light present. So getting some of that red light beforehand, and then starting to schedule out and have a seasonal shift around what time are you getting outside consistently. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, and I'll circle back with questions later, and now I've got to actually speed through a little bit. Okay, so I mentioned that light dark is the most important. I'm going to be spending the most amount of time on this, and so additional tools, because I said I want you to be listening for what is your one behavioral change that you're going to be bringing in for your own life, so please have that ready by the end of this presentation. But red-hued evening lighting, red-hued everything. This, I don't know if this is a couple here, but I see all the time that often we can have, we can be at odds when we're under one roof and people agreeing, do we want to go with this kind of brothel-looking environment? So we do have to get a lot of buy-in on this one is one of the things I've seen. But why are we doing this? We want to align with firelight as much as we possibly can, so getting sort of that orange-red hues. This is one of the reasons why in our cohorts we allow our spouses or other people under the same roof to join for free in our programs, because it helps me to get the results for people if everyone's on board, because that's one of the biggest behavioral change issues we have is that, oh, I'd love to, but the kids won't do it, the husband, the whatever. So look to see in your space how you can just even start to bring like one light bulb in to begin, and then we can start to domino from there. So again, fiery hues, orange, reds. This is my refrigerator. Please don't judge me. I am not a nutritionist or anything of the sort. That's not my forte. But I will say one thing that you can do is just make red everything, basically, meaning that if you've got any pesky things, my Kindle, covering that with red, this happens to me, this very bright AC unit that is annoyingly in my space. So I put this like $10 filter over top of this, so we can get clever, crafty is the word, around our environment. And this might take some time, this might be a little weird initially, but why are we doing this? Well, if sleep is so crucial, and if we know that in some studies, even 30 minutes in ordinary room lighting depletes melatonin production by nearly 90%. So how many of us are, throwing back melatonin supplements, or in this room maybe suppositories? Good old biohacking jokes. So when we're doing these things, we might be skipping over, and really just, we get it. We grew up in these environments where like our grandmother had the 60-watt light bulb. How could that be so damning? Well, it turns out, one, the lighting has shifted over the years, but two, we want to get aware of just how much this is making a difference. Remember those warning labels on light bulbs when used at night previously. So just be thinking of your space and how you can cover some of this up. And when you can't cover up all that bright light exposure, or you're going out and about, hopefully in your own space, you don't even need these too much, right? Danny's nodding. I know she's been great with this. Maybe you caught her presentation earlier, did a great job of walking through all this. So hopefully you're really not having to deal with this at your own space, but maybe, you watch a show, TV, or what have you. So we want to make sure we have some of these elements to block out some of these kind of harmful lights, not kind of, very harmful lights. And I do want to say, too, that in case the price is ever a barrier, I'm actually currently not sponsored by any blue blocker right now. So I can also say that my very first pair of blue blockers was in 2016, Uvex Construction, like $9. They looked ridiculous. Some nods, okay. Looked ridiculous, but highly effective. So in case the price could be a hindrance or what have you, there are absolutely quality, workable, get the job done blue blockers at lower price points. But if you want to make it look nice and what have you, and not to say that there aren't some that you've got to verify and make sure actually are doing the job. How do you do that? You look at some blue light, and if you can still see it, then stop blocking blue light. Okay. Okay. And one quick call out about this. I see this all the time. People say, oh, I'm good. I've got Felix Grays, or I've got like these clear blue blockers. Probably this room knows, but I do want to make sure I say that orange is one of the most popular colors that we get for our clients, just because the red can sometimes be a little much. You're tripping over yourself. If you can, make this work. And I'm running out of time. I got to speed it up. But I will say that if you're looking for where to begin, get yourself an orange pair, and you want to be wearing those after sunset. Okay. So red screens. You may or may not know about this. You may already be doing this, or Maybe it's set up on your phone, but maybe you're not always using it. A lot of reasons. So if you have an Android, you can use the Twilight app, and it will turn your phone red. If you have an iPhone, you can use the hidden red color filters. That is a hidden setting, and then once it's set up and really workable. Just recently, someone was doing a fancy shortcut that was, I didn't even realize we could do, where you can set it up so that it's automatically coming on, automatically coming off. You can change the gradient. So for the tech people, there's lots of ways to make this really workable. Auto-timed lighting. This is if you also don't want to have to think about turning on these particular lights at different points. You can get these at on Amazon for like $10 or so, Christmas lighting or holiday lighting options, so that you can just kind of have this all happen automatically, but maybe without some of the EMF concerns of Philips Hues, if you've heard of those. Okay, and I mentioned vitamin D. This is pretty crazy. I don't know if we all knew, or maybe just to remind everyone, you can get vitamin D from a lamp or a light source, especially you northern latitude location people. If you are in Canada, Karen Martell, yes, we were chatting about this. She's helping many of her clients get set up with these things. So when you're in a northern latitude location, there is an entire swath of the year where you cannot get sufficient vitamin D production. And so we want to be aware of those things and know what we could be set up with. So these are a couple brands. Here are some apps. I've mentioned some of these already, and the one in the middle that I didn't mention is a light meter, and there's a bunch of these. Really, they're meant for photographers, but you can use them so that you can start to become a bit of a detective of what is the lighting in your space. So, if I was to put this up in here, often indoor lighting spaces, or there's a whole range, but usually below around 1,000 lux. I won't say that that's exactly the case here, but commonly indoor lighting can be, what's that? Yeah, exactly, right? Thank you. I appreciate that. He was not even a plant or anything. Look at that. That's fantastic. Exactly. Thank you. 200 lux. And for context about that, you probably heard about seasonal affective disorder and, you got to get your 10,000 lux little light box. Well, we also want to know that close to the equator on a bright summer day, we can get up to 100,000 lux. So when we're talking about being in a space like this with all these lights, it's 200 lux. That's a big mismatch for our body to understand this is day and doing all the day activities that the body needs to do. Now, at a glance, these are some of the tools that I just ran through, if helpful. Does anyone have any of that one behavioral change so far? We're not done, but what's that? Yes, love action. Okay, fantastic. See, this is what it's all about. I see this all the time. People can learn about these things, but unless we're doing anything with it, it's just sort of information for information's sake. So let's get in action. Fantastic. Now, I've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to speed through the rest of this, and this is our second time giver, or Zeitgeber. Fancy term, you don't need to worry about that, but essentially knowing that temperature falls below light dark as far as it's one of the next most impactful areas to impact and entrain that circadian rhythm, that body clock, telling the clock, stay on time. So this little color coding means that we want our body to be warmer by day and markedly cooler, I think cooler than a lot of people might realize, by night. And this is, I promised to explain this, so I mentioned that little gold star, and this one gets a gold star, because I see this all the time, that people say they're doing this and think they're doing this, but then we look at their stats and they're not doing this. So waking up at the same time daily, this could sound so basic, but it turns out that after looking at thousands of Oura Ring users, I see all the time that this is an Oura Ring, this is pulled from Oura Ring, and this person is having a consistent wake-up time without a lot of, peaks and valleys and what have you. That's what you want to have. You want your weekends to look like your weekdays. and plus or minus around 30 minutes in general. Why am I talking about that with temperature? Well, it turns out that a really important way to regulate your body temperature is to have a consistent sleep-wake cycle. Many people don't. Many people, cue the yawns, I know. So many people are dealing with what? They're dealing with social jet lag, and that's a term where we're not even getting on a flight or anything, but we're experiencing the symptoms of jet lag. So this is a big one, and maybe could be a behavioral change for you to select if you're not already doing that. But more direct temperature things that we would probably think of, right? This is one that, while an investment, it's probably one of the few products or products or gadgets that I see really move the needle for people with their sleep stats. I do not see often supplements, as far as sleep supplements, right? People say, like, oh, just give me the sleep stack. Rarely do I see that be the place to begin. I'm not saying that that can't be a cherry on top after doing all these other things, but rarely is that the thing that's really moving the needle. This is one, however, that could be purchased that makes such a difference. And I anticipate more people being in the arena on this, but right now it's really Chili Sleep, Sleep Me, 8 Sleep, the two for that. How many people have one of these? Okay, yes, emphatically, yay, 2 hands, yes. Oh my gosh, that's the only thing. You do get kind of addicted to these things when you travel. It's kind of a bummer. Okay, so a couple minutes left. One of the other reasons that I want to really underscore, so last year when I spoke here, from a practitioner perspective, I shared how I believe that circadian health is going to be one of the next big things in wellness. So if you are a coach or someone that works with different clients or in some capacity helping others to impact their health, one of the reasons that I share that this is so crucial is it provides this cool blueprint that's been tested, tried and true from nature for so long that it shows us where we put some of these biohacks. And what's a common one that we're seeing? Cold exposure. But where do you put this? So we want to, in general, we're doing cold exposure by day and then heat exposure by night. Why would we do that? Because I said we want to have warmer days, cooler nights. Turns out there's this paradoxical warming effect after being exposed to cold therapy. So despite it being initially cold, it's going to get you warmer than you were without that intervention and be very wake promoting. So putting that by day, because that's very a day activity. And then by night, now this one's a little nuanced. It can depend on the type of sauna, the timing, the individual. And heat isn't just a sauna. So in case you're like, well, I don't have a sauna, rude. You can also be around getting, having a warm bath, having a warm shower, et cetera. So the protocol for that, we just actually had 8 Sleep on with an expert solely around temperature and sleep. And then their findings were that you want to have at least 10 minutes of heat exposure 1 to 2 hours before sleep, and the impacts landing as helping to support people both falling asleep, staying asleep, and sleep quality. So that's pretty good. So test that out if you're not already doing that. Dynamic thermostats. Now, this could be an EMF concern, but I'm sharing this just because in the future, you can anticipate that we'll have more circadian-aligned houses that are, corporations or businesses that are doing these all the time, including things like hospitals and what have you. So making this circadian aligned. So warmer days, cooler nights. How cool? Between 60 to 67 degrees while you're sleeping. Who is doing that? Love this room. No one's doing that outside of this room. Okay, amazing. Okay, I love it. All right, we'll keep that up because I think I might have shared that part of the reason my sleep stats went down was because my AC messed up last night and it was a big problem. Okay, so now to wrap it up, I only have like a minute. So chronopharmacology, the timing of our drugs, this gets a little more complicated, but understanding that certain drugs that we might be taking can have a warming effect or a cooling effect. So just auditing the things that we're putting into our body consistently, or what are some of the effects on our circadian health. You can track your temperature with some of these trackers that it sounds like many of you are already using, and particularly for the women of menstruating age. If anyone checked out Karen Martell's fantastic talk, understanding how important this is to be aware of where we're at in our cycle and then managing this can be helpful. Now, at a glance, here are all our tools, right? I'll give you a second, fantastic. And then I also want to say that my hope, hopefully, you can let me know, but hopefully this was inspiring. And I can also give you how to get these slides if you do want them. I'll give you that information. But I hope that this is opening up some ideas around how you could impact your sleep maybe a little more out of the box. So in case you're like, all right, I'm doing some of those, I promise there's something on this remaining list that we can up-level, right? Meal timing, a huge one, movement timing, thought timing, drug timing, sleep-wake timing. These are some of the things that we can start implementing that go beyond just using some lavender to sleep better, right? I'm always hating on lavender. Okay, so in summation, sleep is a skill. Start practicing it, please. I really, truly believe that it can change the world if we were to all be well-rested individuals and helping each other. If you've got a snoring partner or what have you, let's get them tested. Let's get going. Let's make a difference here. And finally, I mentioned too, if you do want those slides, and I was kind of, clicking through, just email team@sleepisaskill.com. I can get you those slides. And then if you are really struggling, my mission again on the planet is to help support people having agency with their sleep. So we have lots of ways you can get kind of free content. We've got that podcast I mentioned when I finally told you the name, the newsletter. We've got an upcoming cohort as well, if anyone is looking to use all those trackers that you're already using and then up-level those results, maximize that value. Those are all available too. But thank you so much for your time and attention.